For section A, you need to start by writing down public displays of affection make her always turn red, which means production, distribution, exhibition, marketing, Hollywood, awards, technology, and then recently. And you need to build all of them into your answer. So you start with the intro and you address the question, and then you bring in other contributions which are from that list. And then take each stimulus at a time, talk about the stimulus, and bring in about 3 of the other contributions. And then give your own examples, and with own examples try and give box office data, statistics, numbers. And then the conclusion should always end with that if someone knew how to market and make a perfect film, there won't be an industry. For section B, you need to start with introducing the films. Horror of Dracula was directed by Terence Fisher in 1958. Christopher Lee was Dracula, Peter Cushing, Van Helsing. Then Eden Lake, directed by James Watkins in 2008. And you've got Janet, played by Kelly Riley, and Steve, played by Michael Fassbender. And you just give a bit of a summary about the films, and then contextualise, which basically means how does it link to the question, and then relation, how does horror link to the question. Then discuss each idea one at a time. So for the ideas, if it's typical of the genre, you're going to talk about repertoire of elements, narrative conventions, subgenre, and fears and messages. If it's gender representation, you're going to look at women as strong figures, women as symbols of society, men as gentleman figures, and men as symbols of society. If it's British stories, you'll look at values, fears, technology, and narration. If it's narrative devices, conflicts, omniscient or restricted narration, linear narrative and cause and effect, and messages and values, values, intentional and unintentional messages, fears, and gender. And then conclude by summing up what you think is the most important part, and just do the same again for section C. So introduce the films. So you've got The Outlaw of Josie Wales by Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood plays Josie Wales and Bill McKinney plays Tyrell. They're the protagonist and the antagonist. And then in Unforgiven you've got Clint Eastwood again, who plays William Munner, and Gene Hackman, who plays Little Bill. The Outlaw Josie Wales was directed in 1976 and Unforgiven was directed in 1992. Again, contextualise it, how it links to the question, relation, how does Western link to the question, and then again discuss issues. So if it's key themes, you're going to look at breaking the gender stereotype, objects as symbols of the West, loyalty and glorified myths. Messages and values, you can look at family values, intentional messages to do with gender and stereotyping and glorified myths, and unintentional messages to do with objects as symbols. Narrative conventions can look at the ending, the way that they ride away. Prologue opening is a storytelling technique. Liminal period creates allegiance, and we're following an adventure. Genre conventions, it's a repertoire of elements. Narrative conventions, revisionist messages and values. And if it's wider contextual studies, you've got the War of Independence, which makes it revisionist, which links to the fact that it's revisionist. It's not glamorising it. The messages, values and genre conventions are very revisionist. And then again you conclude with the most important point.